All right, guys, I am back again with another different video, and for good reason. Have you guys seen this show? This is Dandadan, a newer anime show that's, at the time of recording this, 8 episodes in, and it's absolutely fantastic. Now, I could go on about the plot. I'm a big weeb. We could get into that another time, but why I'm here now is look at the art, the colors. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Now, this art is so good that it motivated me to paint my first ever bust. And I just so happened to have Candy-chan laying around from Neko Galaxy. I happened to pick this model up last year when I was in Osaka. I thought it'd be a really cool souvenir, and then I got very overwhelmed. I never painted anything at this scale before. It is a first for me, and I thought this would be the perfect time to dive in. So while I struggle to build a plinth and do all this, because I definitely did not have the right tools, let's talk about art. So art, that is a very vague and wild topic to get into. But really what I want to get into most of all is being inspired and finding what inspires you artistically. Now, for me, watching this show, Dandadan, just struck a chord with me in such a way that made me say, I need to create art. But then you look at the show and you say, what am I going to paint like this? I don't do traditional art really, in the sense of I'm not like a canvas painter or doing illustrations or anything like that. I like to paint minis. And with minis, everyone tends to be in this bubble. Now, Games Workshop isn't really to blame, but it is very easy to fall into that sort of pattern that they tend to push, the Games Workshop system. Now, there is nothing wrong with it, but you can do different things. Like in my last video where I was sitting down and chatting about stuff like this, we were talking about oil washes, but in a different path but neighboring rabbit hole. I want to make art instead of copying the box art or other people's paint jobs, if that makes sense. Now, it is different, and you can absolutely slap me in the face and call me a hypocrite, because this happens with army painting on a big scale. It's very hard to commit to be like, I'm gonna have monochrome blue Tyranids, which honestly would be really awesome. But nobody really does that sort of thing. And somebody should. That'd be really cool. But it's very easy for a million different reasons to try to paint things in this realistic style, which also can be cool. I don't mean to downplay that at all. I just want to not be limited. And I want to help people try to not be limited and expand their art, right? Because even if you're here for the sole purpose of, I want to learn how to army paint, and like I can't draw, don't have an artistic bone, but Space Marines are cool. That is awesome, because this hobby is amazing because you're still making art and you could push it. You could be inspired to try something a little different with it. Next, I'd like to share some artists that inspire me for various different reasons, but I think there is something that you could learn and take from each of these people. These are some of my favorites, and some people not even overall like favorite artists ever, even though some of them are, but it's a lot of just recently pieces of art that have stuck in my mind. Now, there's some classic amazing painters on here. There are animators, They were just random artists that I found on Instagram and everything in between. Now, I'd like to put some of these guys on screen to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, of like looking at art outside the standard Warhammer sphere, right? And we could try to take something from this. Now, these are just some of my current favorites, like I was saying. There is, of course, Frank Frazetta, Gerald Brom, Boris Vallejo, Pascal Blanche, andrewcadima, sorry if I mispronounced that, Godtail, James Fenner, and other amazing animations like Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse, Dandadan, of course, and Studio Trigger, specifically Cyberpunk Edge Runners, absolutely amazing. Now, there are so many more pieces of media you could be inspired by, but why not be inspired by these absolutely amazing artists and try to apply that to mini painting? And that's what brought me to painting this bust. And I think this thought is really going to push me in a lot of upcoming projects to get weird with it, man. Break out of the normal tabletop sphere and make cool art. Yeah, I think that's the plan. Now, before I go though, as I'm yapping and painting this model, I want to share with you guys the very basics of color theory. I know there's a million videos on YouTube that you guys could watch, but I would like to share some very basics just in case you happen to find this one. Maybe I convinced you to be a little bit more adventurous and artistic about this, right? Because really, it is this simple. You pull up a color wheel and you could just pick one of these color schemes. Now, this can be applied to any colors on the wheel, but there is monochromatic, where you just pick one color, like yellow, for example, and you do dark yellows, light yellows, mid yellows, paint something with all that. There is analogous, where you take a couple colors that are next to each other on the color wheel and only use those. There is complementary, where you have two colors on the opposing sides of the color wheel. Split complementary, where you have one on one side and it splits on the other, kind of like a Y shape type of thing. There is triadic, where it is a triangle, easy enough. There is a square that is a square shape, and a rectangle that is a rectangle shape. Super simple. If you just make any of these shapes on a color wheel that you could just Google right now, your model, your paint job will look cool. It will look interesting. Now, there is nuance in that and better and worse ways of doing it, as far as like which color to go more on, which ones to go lighter on, and that sort of thing that you'll figure out while you're doing it. But you can make an interesting model by just doing that. And it's kind of awesome. It's super dope. Now, if you got this far, if I convinced you a little bit, you have a foot halfway in the door, and you say, but Kyle, I can't go this wacky and paint my whole like 3,000 point Space Marine list like this. But my child, skirmish games could open up a world of possibility where you might be doing 5 to 10 models and you could vary it up, do different things, play around with different ideas. And it is still a little bit crazy to be like, I want to paint everything like Cyberpunk 2077 army wide. That is awesome, and you should do that, but I can understand where that, there's some hesitance there. But why not do a Mordheim warband or a Kill Team or Infinity or any of these other games that are absolutely awesome? So with all that, let's go to the spinny shots. My friends, thank you for listening this long if you still hung around. I appreciate you listening to me rant about art being cool and inspiring. And I really, really hope that this inspired, even if it was just one of you guys, to look outside the sphere of Warhammer painters and look to outside media and artists to be inspired. That's really my main goal of this whole Yap session. Look at traditional artists, anime, cartoons, movies. Get out of the bubble of watching other mini painters. Now, granted, there are amazing guys that you should still be inspired by, but you could also be inspired by so much more and bring that into your painting. Man, Dandadan got me all messed up. But if you want to hang out with me while I stream and paint more things in more wild colors, I am over on Twitch at twitch.tv/drinkyourpaintwaterlive at least 3 days a week. And for all the artists that I mentioned before, I'm going to put as many of their Instagrams as I could find in the description. And please go check them out. They're absolutely amazing. The use of colors, and it's just mind-blowing. Please just give them a look. And with that, I will see you in the next one.